Pete, what's the story? How are you getting on? It was quite confusing, the emails back and forth and the messages with thanks, Peter. Hi, Peter. And it felt like I was talking to myself at times all the time, but sure, that's the world we live in now, I suppose. Kids are in bed and you're ready for a bit of a yarn on all things rugby, I suppose.
100%. I'm good to go. But yeah, you're right. I wasn't too sure whether you're a Petey guy. So what do you prefer?
Oh, mate, you know, like you get all different ones, don't you? So I get P, I get Pete, I get a lot worse than the two of those as
No, all good, man. Good
And
stuff.
what's going on? So you have had a big push with the NFTs over the last week. That was obviously a lot of work. And how's that going? Have you got many people signed up yet? Much interest?
So we did our first. We tied it in with a sale, and like really good. We had a good take up from that with the sale, and then 10 people won some of the gold rare cards. So we're having a Zoom meeting with those 10 people tomorrow night because there was just people needed help setting up their wallets and how to do it and how to receive it. So we're slowly working through it, and then we'll release more as we go throughout the rest of the year.
So I'm sure everybody that listens to the podcast will know who you are and what you do, but do you want to give us a brief overview of Rugby Bricks and what you guys are doing and what you're bringing with the NFTs as well, and how that's kind of diversifying the business in some way, if that's an appropriate word? I don't know, I might pull it out my arse a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been fun learning about the NFT world like the last month or two. It's been really exciting. So I guess Rugby Bricks, how it all started. So I was playing for Northland in provincial rugby there. 2017 was my last year that I played. And I was a really big basketball player growing up. I loved basketball. That was my main sport, got into that, cricket as well. And then following a lot of social media around basketball trainers and skill acquisition, some of the coaches, like you've probably seen yourself, like a lot of their drill work, ball handling was so at a much higher level than what I found in rugby. In rugby, it was all just like, here's the 3 key tips. And it was always sort of targeted at maybe like a 10-year-old. Whereas there wasn't enough content for your academy players, sort of people that really want to get into rep rugby and pro rugby. What's the content for them? And there just wasn't any. 2017 just started out putting out some passing tips, some vision, kicking stuff. And like anything, when you first start, it's a little bit, the content's not great. You're still learning, you're editing, but you get better as you go. And that was the start. And I suppose the main reason why I wanted, like I always wanted a kicking tee. I had no idea how to do it, how to build one, what went into that. And we can talk about that for sure. But the idea was, I want to build an audience first to then sell the tees to, and that'll be a really good way to go about it.
Yeah, 100% loads there that I love. Like, you know yourself, when you get a little bit older, as you said, like you're given the, say, pillars or whatever when you're younger, this is what to focus on. And you're told this is the only way that you can pass a rugby ball, or this is the only way that you can kick a rugby ball, and this is the only way that you can tackle. And then like what I love about what you're bringing with the content you're bringing is you go to the highest level and you say and see, even if you're chatting to Aaron Smith or Ben Smith or whatever, whenever they're talking, they always say, well, this is just the way that I do things. Like it's different for everybody. And that's something that I love about the kicking as well. You've identified kind of, there are totally different styles in kicking for different people. And it's based on your body shape and what kind of your strengths are. And if you've long levers, like you might want to use a hop kick, like the likes of Jordy Barrett, and just fucking get through that thing and fucking drive it as far as you can. But not everybody's going to be able to do that. Like,
and one thing that I noticed was like, if you have a look at the golf content, so you hear a lot of pro golfers talking about their grips, what they do in bunkers, like when they explain something or what they're trying to do, then every golfer that weekend that watched that video, when they go play their game, who aren't pros, completely amateur, they're all like, oh, I'm going to give this a go. So the same thing applies for the Rugby Bricks content. Like instead of just saying, here's the 3 ways to kick a ball better, it's like, no, here's something, maybe trial. And if it works for you, keep it. And if not, try something else.
Yeah, that's the life of a goal kicker though, isn't it? Like at the same time, you're just constantly trialing things and then just throwing them out the next week. Like sometimes you have to be a little bit patient with it as well and just stick at it and see if it comes good and wait a little bit longer. But you know yourself, when you're out there by yourself kicking at the post and it's not fucking going well for you, like it can be easy to just, at times you want to go home. Generally you won't go home, you'll keep going until it comes good, but at times you need somebody there as well with you that's going to say, no, do you know what, we'll pack it in and we'll go home and tomorrow will be another day.
Yeah, and I take again a lot of inspiration from basketball. Like Steph Curry probably shoots more than anyone else in the world at trainings, after sessions, and like just the respect he puts on like keeping the rhythm, keeping the feel, like week in, week out. And that's what it takes for these pro kickers as well. You don't sort of just get to a certain stage and you're done, you've clocked it. It's that constant week in, week out, turning up and doing the kicks. So yeah, I'm pleased that the content's been taken up and people have been really enjoying it, and I love that about what we're doing.
Yeah, and taking lots of kind of learnings from each video that you put up. Now we might focus on kicking specifically for a little while because we can go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this, and then we can maybe move on to some of the other skills of the game afterwards. But in terms of when you were developing those 10 pillars, were they things that you picked up yourself through your own career in terms of both while you were playing and coaching, or did you, or were there things that you picked from other players as well and incorporated into those 10 pillars? And you can give everybody the 10 pillars there that won't be aware of them maybe.
So the best thing that I did, and I'm so pleased that I did it, was get a kicking journal. And it actually just started from me wanting to gather my thoughts because I was so hungry for help. But then I'd have a session and I just didn't want all those little cues and things that I heard just to disappear and get forgotten about, because you can always go back to your book and sort of jogs your memory. Oh yeah, I haven't been putting much focus on that part of kicking, so let's really bring that back in and nail that. So I guess the 10 pillars came about because I was coaching a lot of kickers and there wasn't I needed to nail it down for my own coaching on what thing we are working on, and that made me a much better coach in explaining it, that this is the small pillar of the goal kick that we're working on for this session. And then it made sense for the player, it made sense for me, become really measurable rather than just trying to kick the ball through the post, which isn't very good coaching. So
sometimes it can be though, can it be?
Well, what I've found is you do all this work, you have a career of kicking, and then in the last few years, it comes back to really simple again.
Yeah.
But you have to go through the process, because as soon as you go up through the grades and then the lights come on, the crowd start cheering. If you're just a cowboy with your technique, that's when you start missing. So I got distracted then. So the 10 pillars. So yeah, I'll go through them all and you can ask if you want me to explain more on them. But the 10 pillars are, so it starts with mindset. And I usually always skip over it, mindset. I just go straight to number 2, which is ball setup, because I'm a big believer that the player has to be ready for all that mindset stuff before you even want to talk about it. So the first pillar is mindset, take it or leave it, depends on where the person is at. Then we go into ball setup, long target, your approach to the ball, your rodeo arm, so talking about the upper body, your plant foot, your kicking foot, your foot, and then your hips up the back of the ball, your momentum, and then the 10th pillar is staying in the kick. So most people say keep your head down. I prefer stay in the kick because it gives it a little bit more description behind it. So those are the 10 pillars, and yeah, happy to talk about whatever on those if you want.
I think it's important as well for people that are listening to this that maybe aren't goal kickers. They might think, how the hell are they focusing on all of those things at once? But the thing is, when you're kicking in a game, you want it to be a non-conscious action at the end of the day. You might pick 1 or 2 things that you're going to focus on, no more than 2 for today's generation anyway. They can't focus on any more than that anyway. But in training or in the sessions that you're doing with the player that you're coaching, they may have a specific focus based on their technique and the goal of the session throughout kind of those 10 pillars. They're not focusing on everything all at once. Like you might say, like with a younger kicker that comes to you, you might say like the lowest hanging fruit here is maybe they're coming off their kick a little bit, so we just want to stay through the kick, as you said, and stay 100%. In it, and that might be the lowest hanging fruit. So you might spend like 4 or 5 sessions just focusing on that pillar alone before you move on to the others.
Totally. And the thing it's done for me is you often talk about your coaching eye when you have been working with a lot of players. You actually get in form just like a player. You get in really good coaching form. And what the 10 pillars has done for me is allow to see things really quickly, because everything I'm looking at falls into one of those pillars. And I can, because I've put so much thought into them and researched and coached them, I can usually find the fix pretty quickly. A good example was, so Ryan Papenhausen, the kicker for the Melbourne Storm this year, he all his kicks that were pretty close to the post and he didn't need much power from, his first step, as we always talked about, was so slow and controlled, and he just built like a plane on the runway really well. Beautiful momentum. Then as soon as he got out to the sideline and in these NRL games and he was all excited, I showed him video footage of him just flying. He literally launched into his first step, which meant that he got really crowded up at the ball. So I guess I was able to spot it straight away because I'd thought about it a lot, and I was able to give him that feedback. And he came back to me and just said, I had no idea I was doing that. I thought I was doing the exact same thing every kick. So that's why it's really important, all this little stuff, because those big lights come on in big games and funny things happen to our body.
And his first step is a lot faster than a lot of people's first step as well. So he's
Yes.
absolutely booting into that ball. But it's interesting as well, because in league, like, it must have been just a case of, I know how I deliver that message anyway. If I was coaching, it would be like, it's league, like there's no one chasing you down. Will you just fucking relax and tax a little bit? Like,
Yes.
like, and you know yourself as well, I would be guilty of this. If you're taking a conversion in union and you're closer in towards the posts and you're kind of, you know, when they have a really fast winger, and you're kind of like, how close can I put this to the posts? And you're between, say, not directly in front of the posts, but you're probably in around the 15. And you're like, how comfortable will I be putting it down here? And will I still get to the ball before he's 5 meters ahead of me? And you always, as you said, focus on that first step being nice and slow. But then you see this lad out of the corner of your eye coming for you. You're like, shit. And then that's when you hook it. And that's when you fuck the kick altogether. So it is very systemized. Your approach has to be very systemized. And I like how the pillars come into a system as well. Do you think that way of thinking comes back to, that is the way that you think, because that's how we think as goal kickers? We're very much like, next job, right? This comes next. Now I do this. Now I do this, and we fit it all into our own system. So then you've kind of applied that to your coaching as well.
Absolutely. It's the way that I think. I've always been a really detailed person. Obviously, I played number 10, so I always was driving the game plan and loving the game plan. But one thing that I definitely respect is there's plenty of like blissfully dumb players out there, and it can be a really good thing. People that aren't too high and aren't too low, and they just want to ball play. But what I find is they always get to a stage where they've had a dip in form, they've got dropped, and now you want a little bit of detail and some coaching to help you get back. So just being really aware of the player and whether they're actually ready for it. Like Cameron Munster's a great example. As soon as he started thinking too much about it, it just all went pear-shaped. So the
just
player has to
head razzle Cam come in next week.
You've got to be ready for the detail, and the coach can sometimes identify that as well.
But to pull it back to mindset then as well, like, because of people that would be kind of system orientated and detail orientated, at times, as we said, that can be an issue too. It definitely was an issue for me in my youth. I was thinking about too many things, and like, I got to a stage I was going kicking almost every day, 5-6 days a week, and trying to improve it. And I didn't have a kicking log for quite some time. So it was all based on my perception of how I kicked that day. So I might have kicked the same amount of goals, but I might have felt I was shit today. And then the next day I might have kicked the same amount of goals and I was like, I was class today. So you have to have some sort of a system and then a measurable kind of approach to your kicking too. And then the best year of kicking that I ever had was when I just reduced it down to in season 1 kicking session a week. And prior to the game, I would just do maybe 3 or 4 kicks. That was all. And then when it came to the game, I know we said you have to be in the right mindset anyway, but prior to that, when I was in my youth, I was always worrying about, right, if I get this kick, then we're 3 points behind, then we go and all this. Whereas I should have been just focused on just kick the ball over the bar. So my best year kicking, I got into a process in terms of mindset of prior to the kick. It might sound ridiculous now to people, but on my last look at the posts, I'd look up at the posts, look back at the ball and say to myself, I'm fucking class. And then I kick it. And I think I missed 2 kicks that year in total. So it's the power of positive self-talk as well. Like when there's any element of doubt, you're probably not going to kick it over the bar.
Yeah, that it's actually, I had something really similar. It wasn't I'm fucking class, but it was it was close to that. I had a catch up with a mental skills coach when I was around the age of 20, and he kept asking me the question like, can if he drew a cross just on a field map, and he said, can you make that kick? And then I always keep giving him the answers around what's the wind doing or distance. And yeah, I'm confident with that kick. And he said, every cross that I draw, you need to answer the question with any day of the fucking week. And it just was a light bulb moment of, you just have to go into every kick. Like this is any day of the week, like no issues. And it gets you in this really confident mindset. And you often notice the best kickers look so deliberate, like they're just, nothing else can happen. They're just deliberate with their approach, their body, their foot strike. Like when a guy like Owen Farrell is kicking really well, or Sexton, like they're only missing like a small margin. They don't have these massive complete mishits anymore because they're so deliberate, and it might just be a misread of the wind or a small thing in their techniques. So I think that's really important. But I suppose you mentioned there about coming through and being young, and that's why I like the 10 pillars, because the other thing that it gives you is confidence in your technique, because you've ticked off 10 areas of your goal kicking. Yes, you might be early in 16, 17 where your body's still growing and you still feel a little bit out of control, but at least you can be confident that you are on the right track with your technique. And that is a really good thing as a goal kicker to have.
There was nothing like that around when I was younger anyway. And same thing for you as well. Like you just kind of had to ask people what their processes were, or you would be scrolling through YouTube videos till the cows come home. And
the answer was keep your head down.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Come back to it all the time. But like you'd be scouring through Johnny Wilkins' autobiography, and then you think, right, if I want to be the best goal kicker, then I have to go kicking every day. And you use it as a Bible rather than an actual book.
Sorry, just one thing on that. Like I often talk about, like, if you just want it, that's not enough. So if me and you jumped in the ring with Floyd Mayweather, like even if we wanted to smash him and our coach was saying, go out there and smash him, like you're good enough, like we still suck at boxing. We don't have a very good skill set, and we haven't worked on our game well enough to be in the fight. And goal kicking is the same. You can't just want it and kick every day. You've actually got to improve at the skills and all the little details behind it.
And it's quality over quantity as well. Whereas a lot of young people get that wrong, and they're like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to take 50 kicks today. And I'm like, 50 kicks? Are you well? Your leg will be hanging off you. Like, just do 15 and do them well, properly, and then do a few maybe lower intensity ones as well and focus on your technique. Like, and you'll get more out of that conscious training and like being in the moment and actually focus on it, rather than saying, I'm going to do as many as I possibly can. It's strange as well though, isn't it? Because like a lot of the time, as you said, when you're in the bright lights and not that I ever played in bright lights, but when you're in a game situation and there's a crowd there and everybody goes silent and they're all looking at you. Now they mightn't go silent in New Zealand, I know, but
yeah, true.
It can get to you. And then like you could be the best goal kicker in training and you could be winning all the kicking comps against your teammates and all that. But like, there's just certain guys that they have a mental block when they get to the game because it's such a different scenario. So it's important to kind of train those things in training and put yourself under pressure and make sure people are looking at you, or say like do or die kicks.
Yes. So a part of that first pillar is the ability to become locked in before the kick. And it's funny, like a lot of the pro kickers, once they've had a couple of years, they want help with their mental, especially goal kickers. Give me a little thing, and it's all something so simple, because what happens in those games, and it doesn't even have to be pro rugby. Like if you're a under 14 player, like this kick means everything to you. All your mates are watching the sideline. It doesn't matter what, like it's all in perspective. But generally with the pro kickers, they get a little cue. Like I remember Lima Sopawanga, before the points were scored or a penalty, he'd look at someone in the crowd and just identify what brand of top they were wearing and what color it was. And what that did was it just meant that you're not in a rush here. Like no one's rushing you just because there's 50,000 people looking at you waiting for you to take this kick. You've got to want to be in this moment and drag it out for as long as possible and just love it. And then another little one that I heard from Kobe talked about is like, it's amazing when you've got a crowd in grandstands all looking at your ball. Like that energy that's in that ball is so contagious, and why people really love the game and love kicking under big pressure moments, because the energy going through that ball is so contagious. So it's another, like there's heaps of little spins that I talk about with kickers, and then they find one thing and usually they stay with that one thing for the rest of their career.
Talking about big moments and just staying in it and not being rushed and taking your time and just delivering, then what keeps popping to mind is 2 weeks ago on Quade and his big redemption moment. Like everybody around the world is saying redemption moment, but Quade has been playing really well for quite some time. Like it's just, he's got that opportunity and taken it, I suppose. And like we're going to separate the kicking from his actual on-field performance now as well. Not that we need to, because they are playing very well, but a lot of casual rugby fans, like sometimes in Ireland especially, like if Johnny Sexton has missed 2 kicks, they'll say, oh, Sexton was useless yesterday. And no, he wasn't. He was unbelievable. He just missed a couple of kicks. Like they're 2 separate parts of the game. You can run a game really, really well and still miss a couple of kicks. So you have to separate them as goal kickers. So fans should be able to separate them as well. But Quade's been on fire with the boot lately. And on field as well. But like, it was just great to see as well, because he's obviously just invested a lot of time into refining everything and just coming back a better player as well.
The thing with Quade is he's tried every kicking drill, technique, coach under the sun, and he's probably got to a really nice space now. Like he's got rid of the arms up thing. He was kicking off a low tee in Japan because he played. I think he played with Johnny actually, maybe in Toulon or something.
Wilkinson, in Toulon, he did.
Yeah. So I think he got a lot of stuff from from Johnny, just with his technique and low to the ground, Dave Allred, all that stuff. So he's in a really simple place now, and like we said a wee while ago, just kick the ball through the post, and now he's got a technique that he just knows. Yeah, sweet, this is me now. Like this is actually something that I know works and I can rely on. And you mentioned about separating the goal kick, like Bowden Barrett, he kicked poor off I think he was 1 from 4 or shocking, but he had an incredible game. And it's funny how what the All Blacks value is from their 10, like Richie Mo'unga is the same. Like if they're not attacking the line, offloading, breaking tackles, scoring tries, scoring points, goal kicking's the 7th thing on the list, whereas I think a lot of other nations have it as number 1 from their kicker. So interesting approaches for different players,
It's lucky they have a lot of them then, to attack the line and have outrageous skills, because they're going well. Like it's just like I know they always say it, and it's the old kind of thing that everybody says, but there's just a conveyor belt. It's ridiculous. Like all these young lads coming in, and they're all just playing so well, and they're not shirking any sort of responsibility. None of them seem overawed by it, and that's a testament to the organization and kind of the culture within the squad, I suppose, as well. But equally, that's kind of going on with the Wallabies as well at the moment. Like there's so many coming through, and they have so many players that are going to be there for a long, long time. And it seems that in the last couple of weeks anyway, they seem to have, and even before that against the All Blacks as well, I suppose, they've refound kind of their identity as a rugby nation again, rather than, it can be tough at times when you try and play like other nations. And I hear JK going on this week, John Kerwin, about how South Africa are now a Northern Hemisphere nation and play like a Northern Hemisphere nation. But no, South Africa have always looked to batter you up front and then kick and then try and get in and around you with Willie LaRue and Colby, or as bash straight over the top of you. It's not new. And at the same time, if you think they play like a Northern Hemisphere nation, it's a bit cliche because look at France at the moment and their games with the Wallabies, like that's not necessarily Northern Hemisphere play. I think each nation kind of has a strict kind of, well, not a strict, but an identity that they conform to that plays to their strengths. And it's good to see the Wallabies back doing that and throwing the ball around and just lighting things up because they're playing some magnificent stuff at the moment.
I definitely think the environment and the setting has a lot to do with it. Like the World Cup is very slow, pressure, eyes on. The referees even ref a little bit differently. And when a team like South Africa tries to play that way in that game on a fast, dry field where everyone just wants excitement, when you're going against the Wallabies or definitely the All Blacks like that, that's a hard game plan and to go with. Because both teams aren't on the same page with it. Like no one's nervous. It's just all on, let's go. So the setting is really important, I reckon.
Yeah, 100%. And when the Wallabies just look to keep the ball in play and not play to your strengths and just like South Africa will always stay in a game as they've showed in the last couple of weeks, no matter if they have the ball or they don't, like they'll just claw their way back in and they'll be within a shout of winning it. But the Wallabies just had it down to a T, right? Well, we're not going to get drawn into this battle up front because why would we? And that seemed to be something that the Lions got drawn into a little bit. It was like, well, we'll beat them at their own game. Whereas sometimes playing to your strengths rather than worrying about the other team is probably a better thing to do. So playing to your strengths is something that I'm sure you kind of employ with a coach, and you've been coaching with on a consultant basis and like going in coaching regularly with a number of different teams. So is that something that you would use in your coaching? Let's focus on ourselves and what we can do rather than worrying about the opposition.
I've spoken to a few people about this. I think the higher level, you have to have the opposition in mind because that's where you can get really good wins. Like we all talk about these big game players, Beauden Barrett, like Rico, Sonny Bill Williams. So if a team is coming to play them, like why wouldn't you come up with a plan to try and stop them? I know Artie Savia, if he just is allowed to do whatever he wants in a game, can absolutely terrorize you. So I think you have to, in that international and pro rugby, definitely have players that you're trying to knock off the train tracks their game, because if you do, like it's really positive for your side. With South Africa in the weekend, I found them quite bland. Like there wasn't much movement in their game. There wasn't any deception. The defense was really easy. Like if you're allowed to fly off the line and nothing changes and you can just hit it hard, it's really simple. But if everyone's trying to fly off the line and then there's a lot going on, inside options, out the backs, cuts, deception, like moving you off sort of your square shoulder line, that's when defense comes hard. And I just thought South Africa just tried to play purely a muscle game with nothing else, which didn't work.
But if you look across their squad then as well, it's like that's not necessarily their strengths if you look into the back line, because they have strengths that they're not utilizing well there, like in the backs especially. Like their wingers are absolutely rapid. Fullback LaRue is a live wire, like, and it seems that, talking about from two systemized people, it seems that they're playing too rigidly to a system at times, and they're not playing what's in front of them. Like I saw a side by side of South Africa winning a turnover at the weekend and then the All Blacks winning a turnover in the exact same position, and the difference. And like Pollard took the ball from de Klerk about 10 meters behind where Barrett took the ball from Pernara. And like, I know it's different approaches, but like you're still after winning a turnover. In a lot of the time when you win a turnover in rugby, at least in Ireland, I know we take a lot of inspiration from what's being done in New Zealand, but it's just like identify the weakest point, like, and attack, ship it, rather than what Pollard did. I'm sure you can guess is he took it deep and he just kicked it in behind
Yeah.
straight to Kellaway, like, and it didn't find touch. Now, if it does find touch, I know that's a good win as well. But like, I'd say if you have Leroux and and you have all these like in Cozy, like you have Colby, all these lads out in the wings, like then just ship it out to them. And it's similar to what they did against the Lions too, but it just seemed to work because the Lions didn't. The Lions said, right, well, we know what you're going to do, so we're going to do what we're going to do, and we're just going to see who does it better. Rather than when Russell came on in the final test, it's like, nobody fucking knows what's going to happen except not even Finn Russell. So that could be useful.
Awesome, man. No, I'm looking forward to this week's games. They're going to be good. Like South Africa, All Blacks is going to be massive. So, South Africa just can't play that blasé kicking game. That's really easy to defend because it's not going to work.
Yeah, 100%. And then to pull it back as well, we're kind of blessed at the moment. Well, you're blessed in the Southern Hemisphere in terms of your viewing pleasure at the moment because the NRL, as you said, you've been working you worked for 6 weeks, was it, with the Storm and the Kickers, with Pappenhausen and all them?
Yeah, so I originally came in for 6 weeks and then I've stayed on for the season.
Unreal.
Which is really, it's been an amazing year just to get to know them. Obviously, the whole comp moved to the Gold Coast just because of COVID, and it was a smart decision. And man, the NRL knows how to run a comp because they just make stuff happen. So it's been remotely for the last probably 12 weeks, probably longer, but in season, there's a little bit different. As a skills coach, you really, and kicking coach, you're not changing too much. You're just checking in and watching videos and huddle and things like that. So, it hasn't been too different to probably what I would have been doing anyway if they were still in Melbourne based.
And it's a big week then as well, because obviously it's the Panthers in what they call a preliminary final, do they?
Yes, yeah. I'm not too sure where that name came from, but yeah, massive game. Obviously the Storm's my favourite team, but definitely the second with Nathan Cleary playing for the Panthers. It's going to be massive. It's going to be a huge game. But I think the Storm just have so many rock stars and people that just put their hand up. It's relentless, their attack. So it's going to be exciting. And
winning is a habit as well. And we saw last year as well in the final. They're just used to getting finals and winning them. And I know the Panthers came back at them, but they haven't got into that yet because they're quite a young team. So it's built up. It's been built up as what we thought was going to be the final this year again, because they've been the two standout teams. But obviously with the Panthers losing 2 weeks ago, they've had to come kind of the scenic route into this semi-final, playing against the Eels last week. But it's going to be massive again. Like, I can't wait for that one. But I'm just interested in terms of working on the skills coach basis and the kicking coach basis. Do you chat to the head coaches and the head coaching team and the kind of sports medicine team as well in terms of what you're going to focus or what your focus is going to be for the following couple of weeks or whatever when you're programming, and then talking in terms of load as well, in terms of the kicking? Because you know yourself, if you're going out kicking constantly, but they're also experiencing a high load in the training, like, it can be an additional load that they don't need, as we see with players like Johnny Wilkinson throughout his career, running into injury, and many, many others.
Yeah, so a lot, and there's a lot to unpack in that question. So definitely with the footy side of things, speaking with the attack coach, it was really important for me to understand the general play kicking and what kicks were really important to them, because on the last play, if you're sort of 40 out and haven't been able to get into their close to their line, your kick can really set up the next defensive set. And it's some of the wins that I think the boys have had, like gaining more accuracy plus height and hang time has been huge. And then all of a sudden, tackle 3, the other team still is sort of 20 meters out from their own line, and the Storm are up and about and in a good position again. So that's been important. And then when they are on attack close to the line, it's really important that your surrounding players all know the 2 or 3 kicks you'll look through it for as a kicker, because then they can chase more aggressively and be in the right places. So it was important to understand those kicks with the grubbers and cross-field kicks and what part of the field they're looking to kick from. And then with the goal kicking, you're right, like in season, these boys, I've never seen a group, especially coming from rugby union, that do so many high run speed meters. Like they train fast and hard, and under Craig Bellamy as well. Like that is another level as well. They absolutely love it. I've never seen guys enjoy training probably as much as the Storm. Winning helps. Josh Addo-Carr, I've never seen someone so excited and happy in a session. It's unbelievable. Talking that much shit. It's so good. So when you're running fast, your hammies are under pressure, your groin's under pressure, and then a kicking coach wants to come in and do 3 hours of kicking. That's not going to work. So we do a lot of stuff with soccer balls, getting a lot of touches and grubber kicking and probably working around that 60% of your kick power. I still want the boys to be deliberate and get their foot in the right places, but we can get a lot of touches in a week by working around 60% at that nice sort of in control feel. And then we always do probably 12 max of your full goal kicking routine. So it balances really well. And then this year as well, on some of the days, we get horrific winds here and it's just a waste of time trying to kick. We go indoors and done a lot with the S&C just around certain drills that can stay on top of hip flexors, groins, hammies, do a set, come and do some kicking drills, do another set, come and do some kicking drills. So that's been really good, and the boys have enjoyed those as well.
What have been the major findings then in terms of the work on hip flexor and work on robustness? Like, has it just meant that they can do more volume or tolerate more volume in terms of the kicking?
It will eventually when they get good at the drills. They're still probably in that learning phase of why the drills are important, like standing there literally on one foot holding your knee up, like the boys could only probably stay there for 30 seconds. If we can get that up to a minute, then all of a sudden minute's just your standard, and just be able to do that for a minute for the next 5 years type thing, I think you can get yourself to a certain point with your groin exercises and your hip flexor strength that you just, you're good and you're on top of things. So that's where we need to get to with the guys.
And then the work with the soccer balls, I'm interested as well, because as a former goal kicker or whatever, I used to actually play soccer quite a lot when I was younger, and I swapped over to rugby when I was about 16, 17. And what I found was initially I couldn't, as we talked about earlier, I couldn't find a tee to suit me for quite a long time, because I was kicking the ball like a soccer ball. So I was getting underneath it, so I couldn't get the distance in it. So what I finally settled on was the Dan Carter one, because it was the lowest possible one. But I would, my question is, in terms of using the soccer balls, are you using them for goal kicking at all, or is it just kind of for drop kicks and for kicking out a hand?
Yeah, so the principle behind the soccer balls, it's funny you mentioned it, because I went through the same thing playing soccer and then moving to the Dan Carter low key. I only used the tee because Dan Carter used it.
Yeah, that's why most people use it, I think.
But the game of soccer, especially like the push pass with the real side of your foot, is a terrible way to try kick a rugby ball. Plus, also, you're rolling the ball along the ground, so no part of that movement is looking for elevation or height or hang time. So we use the soccer balls to train getting your foot up the back of the ball. So if you think about the grubber kick when you're trying to roll it and your foot's up the back of the ball. So we use the soccer balls in warm-up because it's really easy to tell whether it's going on the inside of your foot or you're slicing, because the ball gives you feedback straight away. Whereas with the grubber, with a rugby ball, like, it's very forgiving. The ball generally corrects itself even if you miss hit a little bit. So we use the soccer ball for that, and then also for drop kicks, because you know really quickly whether you've mishit a soccer ball with your drop kick. And again, the ball drops perfect because you're using a soccer ball. So it's a really good feeling thing that the boys really enjoy, getting through a set of 10 off their right, 10 off their left, both grubbers, both drop kicks. Cool, let's go get the footy balls, and we're already primed and really accurate. And I always talk about we got to learn from every rep, got to learn from every kick, and that's the cool thing about the soccer ball, is it gives you the best feedback that I've found in your warm-ups.
Yeah, very interesting as well, because thinking back to like a lot of the drop kick in rugby anyway, a lot of it's on the drop. Excuse me. Yep. A lot of it's on the drop. Like, so if you have a bad drop, it's probably not going to go over the post unless you react fairly quickly, because you've only a split second to react. but like focusing on the actual strike as well and getting as many reps focusing on the strike, like such benefit in that, because rather than focusing on the drop constantly and you'll take a lot longer, you can just rep out strike for so many reps, right and left foot, as you said. And sometimes when you move over to the left foot from the right foot, you have to kind of change your drop. Do you know what I mean? Because you're dropping off the wrong hand, your non-dominant hand. So it's a little bit awkward at first before you transition over. And
the good thing, like we talked about the 10 pillars and just focusing on one thing. The good thing about when you're working on grubbers or drop kicks with the soccer ball is at least the drop now doesn't exist. I can just tell you to focus on your momentum and you're getting nice strikes, happy days, both left and right foot. Nail that. Here's the footy ball, and then all of a sudden you're kicking really well. So it's a great win for definitely developing in kids. Like, have a soccer ball in your bag, you'll never regret it.
Yeah, what a good idea, actually, to be fair, looking at it. Another interesting one is obviously in Ireland we play Gaelic football as well. So
yes,
yeah, so it was.
I always meet random Irish guys down at the field, on the rugby field, kicking
football.
Gaelic.
Yeah, and when I was playing football, then Gaelic football, like the lads used to laugh at me because they'd be like, "Pete, you kick the football like a rugby ball," because it's a totally different. So it's different from soccer and it's different from rugby. And this is why a lot of the Gaelic players that go over to AFL struggle, because they can't get the punt the same. Because in football, you drop the ball, but you wrap your foot around the ball to curl it. So when they go over to AFL, they all end up being backs because they can't kick it straight. They're all insanely fit, insanely powerful, great to tackle, and just workhorses. But there's very few of them that end up in the forwards because it's such a different skill. So this is what I'm touching on here, is there's so many skills in so many different sports that are kind of transferable amongst all the different sports. And it's good to give the players that stimulus by just changing it up slightly, and it keeps them refreshed as well, or it keeps things fresh and keeps them engaged in the session, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right, because I'd never seen someone, I'd seen people kicking a soccer ball. I'd never seen someone kicking Gaelic football style until I came over here and saw a guy at the field. I couldn't believe the ball flight and the accuracy he had on that hook style kick, because if I tried it, and I pride myself on being a good kicker, but it's just something I'd never done before. But you mentioned there about the styles of kick, and I think that's the best key. Like, I had Tony Brown as one of my coaches. Is as a 10, we had 4 kicks that we knew we had to be really good at, like a contestable kick just outside our 22 coming down in the 15 on the right-hand side, a long kick with hide and hang time, drop kicks with either 1 or 2 kicks for kickoffs, and then our goal kicking. So we knew all season that we had 4 kicks we had to get really good at, and then all of a sudden you can put detail about positioning and catching and your body. So I think that's a really good way, and what we've done with the Storm as well is the boys all know what kicks are important.
So obviously working under Tony Brown, or working with him, like he's like, what a coach to work under, but he's been a big influence over your coaching. And he might be another reason that you're so willing to think outside the box as well, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Brownie was, all the boys that played under him really enjoyed him because you had such a clear task to do for the team. It wasn't just the blanket coaching of just go out there and smack someone or go out there and express yourself. Good luck today. It was, here's your task, here's your job, the 4 kicks, when like this is within our moves. Like it was so clear, and he was so over the game plan, players 1 through to 15. Like if you're in the middle 6, 1-3-3 sort of shape, if you're in the middle 6, he knew exactly what styles of passes he wanted you executing, your carries, your offloads, where you'd find them. So it's definitely has inspired me to just be so over the detail. Absolutely, with Brownie. And I played at Forsyth Bar. Like I was there for 4 seasons, and what a fun place to play rugby under the roof in Dunedin.
Yeah, we were talking to Jack Regan earlier in this season, and he was down with the Highlanders, and he was just loving it at the time. He's since come up and he's playing with the Ospreys up here, but he learned so much, he said, down there, and he enjoyed it so much. especially with the zoo going during the
Yeah.
games. It's pretty crazy by the sounds of things. But then talking about coaching, and obviously you're coaching in both league and union, and we're talking about kicks and styles of kicks, and something in the NRL and in league that is used so often and is so effective, but has it's kind of bleeding into union a little bit, is those kicks in the final third in the red zone. And that's something that you're obviously working on a lot as skills coach with the Storm. So my question was going to be, what can you see transferring over from league to union soon? But now I'm going more specific, and I'm going to say, like, how will that specific part of the game transfer over to union when it inevitably does? Like,
I think one thing that we do in union well is we put up contestable kicks, so box kicks or high bombs off the 10. But one thing that league probably does better is they know what they want in the third phase after that's happened. So whether defenses can set traps or force a team to catch a kick and then leave one side open, but we left it open on purpose, then we trap you there and can manipulate you other ways. I think that'll be something that'll come in. I love the fact that they've brought in 50-22 back into union. Like, it's just so good for kickers and the craft and getting the backfield rather than a back two. There's generally more like a back three. So that's coming in. And then the best teams like the Crusaders, just like I was saying before, they know exactly what their kicks are, and all the boys can look for them. And I reckon the teams that are doing that well are really nailing it.
Yeah.
And probably the spiral bomb too, eh?
Well, it's going back, like.
Yeah, so in NRL, definitely the thing that NRL probably have is they don't have to be very accurate, and it always generally results in a tackle and then they're in defense. Whereas in union, it's pretty chaotic. And for some reason, it just is a little bit differently. But Geordie Barrett and Damien McKenzie, definitely in Super Rugby, were bringing it back in and just causing chaos at the back for fullbacks. So I'd love to see more of it, yeah.
But it's good that the skill isn't being lost, because obviously I'm coming from a biased perspective, but in my opinion anyway, the best to ever do it was Raj, the spiral kick in behind. And he, if you work on it and you get to a high level of proficiency, it doesn't take any longer to execute a spiral kick from the hand than it does to do a punt. But it's just that when you're in that learning phase, it kind of takes a little bit longer and there's more room for error, I suppose. So you see the ball going back to Geordie or going back to Damien McKenzie, and they're just comfortable now. They'll just drop it straight down to the foot. And the same thing with what we were talking about, drop goals as well. Like, a lot of it's on the drop too. You have to get that drop spot on before you spiral in behind. But it's so useful, and it's going to be so fucking useful in a 50-22 when you can just get it in over that winger. Like,
yeah. And I think the guys that put time and effort into it, the reason why I think it went out of fashion is because no one was really respecting it enough and putting enough into it, because we keep seeing those massive rogue slices into touch, or people weren't that great. So then it was like, let's just go with the percentages and go drop punt. So, it looks like Damien and Geordie have put some real good time into it, definitely with the high one. But yeah, you're right. If you can hit a hard low dart that skids because it's a spiral into touch, yeah, totally.
That's something about the 50-22 that I kind of was like, because I played a good bit in the back three as well. As you played in fullback a good bit as well, didn't you? Yeah. So I was like, and as playing formerly 10 or not, well, I played utility back is what you usually say, I suppose, but it just means you're not good enough, so they put you on the bench, bring you on. But
number 21.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying is, from a 50-22 perspective, I was like, why didn't we just go 40-22 like the NRL? Because a 50-22 isn't actually that hard a kick. I'm just thinking, if I get the ball off the back of a scrum at 9, I get the 8 to pass it to me, and then I break out to the right so that I've nobody covering me. I just grubber it straight through and try and get into touch, and I'll hopefully find touch into 22 with a grubber very, very easily. So I think, I know it's good that we're taking the power away from the defense by putting more people in the backfield, but I just was like, it's a bit easy. But then I'm not seeing that many of them so far, to be honest.
Yeah, they generally are, the opportunities coming from like the fourth kick or a broken play or a counter attack opportunity. But definitely in like it has achieved it because it has made the backfield defend the space. So therefore, it's encouraging the attacks to have a crack and run it more. So I just like that there's a really good element to the game that it can be a really good momentum swing in the game for a team if it happens for you.
Absolutely.
There was one last week that had a huge effect. The crowd all gets around it. But then we go to another slow. I think there's too many slow things in the game of rugby union at the moment. It's just, and you think about a scrum. We think about a scrum, like it's the heart. I love the scrums, and they should stay in the game. But it may be a shot clock or something. But it's such a technical thing that takes so long to set. It goes down, ends up in a penalty or something, and then we go to another slow thing, which is a line out, which is technical, gets thrown in, and someone knocks it on. Oh, sweet, we're back at the scrum.
Mate, don't be complaining there now, because you're in the southern hemisphere. We have French referees up here, where if the scrum goes down, but if the ball is at the back, like the Irish or the English referees or the Welsh or whatever, most of the time will just say, just play it, get it out of here, because we're on our third scrum anyway. But if that scrum wobbles and falls at all, even if the ball is almost already out, the French just love scrums. They'll pull you back and they'll reset. So you could watch 5 scrums in a row before they give a penalty, and it's fucking watching the Lions series. It's 50-50 who's going to get that penalty.
I was laughing here because in New Zealand, we've got Sky Sport, and then I've come over to here, and literally when a knock on or a scrum's awarded, they go to an ad break. So they sneak an ad break in for 30 seconds because they just know this is a waste of time for everyone else. Let's just sell an ad. And then sure enough, the ad finishes and nothing's changed. They're literally about to pack in. So yeah, I just wish we could get away from slow to slow. Oh, here's another slow thing. There has to be, because other sports like the NRL are making changes that just keeps it all on and exciting. And then fatigue comes into the game, which creates even more exciting rugby. So yeah, I'd like to see another slow act taken out of the game somehow.
Yeah, 100%. And then I was actually at a club game last weekend, and I saw the first goal line dropout in a club game. And I was just wondering, what's your opinion on that? Because that's another slow thing, because I think it's because teams aren't preparing for it though. So then when it happens, they don't really know what they're going to do. And then they're like, whoever's kicking it to 10 usually is looking around. He's like, I'm just going to kick it deep. Like,
I think it is a good one. And I probably think it is rather than a slow one, I think it's intended to be a fast one, because you get held up, and then instead of setting a scrum, you go, it should happen a lot quicker. But I think because there's a little bit of confusion and we've never done this before, it'd be nicer for that kick just to happen quicker and get on with it. So like in the NRL, like if you make a kick that's too long and someone catches it in the in goal on the 4, it's a quick tap on the 20 for your team. So it's just everyone lights up. It's back on, like, let's go. There's just we haven't got a play like that other than a quick tap from a halfback. There's no other play like that in our game.
That's coming back though. And like the quick taps in the 22, whereas teams would have before just went straight to line out and tried to set up a maul, and it's still the percentage game. And as a coach, I was for a long time being like, let's just play the percentage game, but that's me being boring Northern Hemisphere, as you'd probably say. Exeter have brought it back, and then the Lions employed it. England are doing it, and it's probably because they have the strengths there in the likes of like Cowan Dickey to just tap and go. Leinster are doing it now too, and it's a little bit riskier, but it does speed things up. To bring it back to the goal line dropout though, like, what do you reckon is a good way of dealing with that? Because what I'm seeing anyway in the NRL, a lot of the time they will go long, but if you go long in Union, you're like, if you go long and you hit, say, a Taniela Tupou and you give him 40 meters to run up on you, like, that's not much of an advantage in going long. So I was thinking, like, why don't we go like not short, but just go high and chase it and try and either win it back or get them on the back foot immediately, rather than giving them 40 meters run up.
Yeah, I think their tactics, you're right there. Like, it's like a kickoff when you're wanting it to sort of come down from halfway just inside the the 22 with good height and hang time and almost arriving at the same time. I think the same thing could be said for that style of kick. Because the other thing too, with the goal line dropout, you had it long, they catch it on halfway. Like a lot of good kickers could have a shot at goal there, like a free drop kick,
True.
you know. So it's a good tactic there. So yeah, no, I think you're right. Somewhere near the sideline, that's about 30 meters of distance, fast winger chasing, and then arriving at the same time. And a plan off that would be really good.
Yeah, it's strange how the lower you go down in grades, probably the lower the preparation is, or the less preparation there is, but also the increase in panic when the ball moves closer to your line. So at that club game I was at last week, one of the teams got blocked on a box kick 3 times in their own 22. Wow. But it was because when they won the ball, or if they won it on a turnover, they didn't relax and say, right, let's play another phase, set up and box kick. The ball came to the back of the ruck. The 9 just picked it up and went to box kick it straight away. So you're after a turnover. So you have no blockers in place, and their players that were actually contesting that ruck, because it was going to be their ruck, are right in front of you. So no wonder you're going to be blocked. And the same thing can be applied to that goal line dropout as well. As you said, just treat it as you would a dropout on halfway and back your defense to win, because you're in the same position. Or you, like, rugby is rugby, like, essentially same thing as you said with Pappenhausen and his kicking. Like, whether you're kicking from the sideline or kicking from in front of the post, you have the distance either way, so just do it the exact same way. Like,
and there was one thing I picked up from Brownie with the kicking strategy is we always had it was called 12 bodies kicking, and because there's 3 in a ruck, 2 in a ball carrier, generally there's 12 bodies that have to be organized. So whether we were exiting with a box kick, cool, if I hit pause, I need to count 12 bodies that know exactly what they're doing in the right position, blocking the box kick or making the ruck longer for the halfback, blocking for a kicker in the pocket. Like all of those 12 bodies have to be doing the job. And that was definitely something I learned from him, just around, we know our kicks, we know how we're going to exit with this box kick or passing back to the pocket. Cool. How can everyone else help this better? It's probably what you're explaining about that club game. It's just like a coach probably told the 9, I want you to box kick more, without any plan for how he could do that effectively. It's not a good way to set up your players for success.
Yeah, 100%. Or it may have been down to the 9. It mightn't be just down to the coaching as well. It could be the message was misconstrued a little bit. So it's like, if we get in a 22 box kick, but then he might take that up as, the minute we get into 22, I'm going to put boot the ball rather than relax and then box kick. I suppose that's delivery and communication as well, though. But to move over now into some of the more nerdy kicking stuff, I suppose, I wanted to ask you what your favorite rugby ball to kick is and why. And then I wanted to ask you about kick and tees as well, obviously, because you're an expert in that.
Yeah, so the Adidas ball that they use in the NPC, so the Bunnings Cup it's called at the moment, is probably the best game ball that I've ever kicked with. They wear out real quick. They literally are a game ball because they're bald in 3 weeks afterwards, but they're so soft, great weight. And I just found like they were awesome. And then my second very close would be the Gilbert Cyrus, which is their international ball, which is probably just a little bit more to it, a touch heavier. But yeah, those two would be my favorite. But the reason they're so expensive is because the rubber's so good, but that durability they're not made for durability. They're made for one game. So that's why they're so nice to kick. And one advice I do give kickers is don't chase the nice match balls if you're coming through. Like, it's okay to have a bag of shit balls that are all different, because it teaches you and you learn more from each kick. So the pro balls and the good fields are coming. Just do your time.
Absolutely. In Leinster, they brought in rhino balls, like when I was younger, and we used to kick. It was Gilberts before that, so I used to do all my kicking with Gilberts. And I remember the first year that they brought in rhino balls. all the kickers were missing everything because the
Yeah.
Rhino ball is so different to kick. It's a lot skinnier than the Gilbert ball. As you said, the Gilbert ball is heavier and it's a little bit wider, so you have more room to work with that sweet spot. With the Rhino ball, they're not anymore, but they were a lot skinnier, so there was a lot less room for error, and they were a lot harder as well. You know, when you kick a really hard ball that has no give in it whatsoever. So that was like,
that's what
but you have to adapt as you go, don't you?
The ball manufacturers, the training balls, when they sell to clubs and schools, like the training balls are made to last for like 12. I used to work for a rugby ball company. That's why I know they're made to last ideally for a season. So they have to be hard and grippy, and it sucks for kickers because they're this the hard thud on your foot that isn't nice. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean there.
And the other one that we all love up in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, but it hasn't been around for a long, long time, is the Webb Ellis. If you remember a Webb Ellis ball, yes. They were lovely. That was basically a football, like a soccer ball. Like they were so wide.
And Johnny made those look good too.
Yeah, 100%. They always look good when they're going through the posts. An interesting one that I wanted to ask you, because obviously you have so many kicking tees with Rugby Bricks, and they're all suited to different kickers, as you said. I wanted to ask you, is there any rugby tees with Rugby Bricks that didn't quite make it to market, but you still are kind of like, maybe that will work in the future?
Yeah, there's one that I tried. It was a brush tee, and that was a fail. Big fail. It was the first one I had a crack at, actually, because I tried to be too clever and invent something that the market had never seen before. And golf had the brush tees that worked perfectly for a golf ball that's perfect sphere, heavy, that'll sit there. But for a rugby ball that's awkward and weird and different shape, it just didn't fly. So I've still got the prototype in the cupboard that I still pull out and have a look at. And then moving forward, I've got one tee that's in the works at the moment that'll be pretty exciting. That's a completely new one, and it'll sit above the 6 that we've got already. It'll be its own standalone, pretty cool project. Yeah.
In terms of working with so many kickers, are you finding that more kickers are going for a specific one of the tees, or maybe more kickers are kicking off a higher tee now than they were in previously? Like if you look back to, we were talking earlier about, say, Carter, Wilkinson, Rodge, they all kicked off quite low tees, whereas now you see more kickers starting from not a 45-degree angle, but maybe a little bit narrower and a little bit more behind the ball. Not as narrow as, say, a Lee Halfpenny, but somewhere in between the two.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and I think the why it happened is really important. So a lot of the old school kickers put their heel on the ground and screwed it around and then put the ball just on the ground. Like this is probably going back 20, 30
I did
years.
I did that when I was a kid.
Exactly. So now the ball's really low to the ground. So that's how everyone kicked. And then Carter and Johnny and a few of those guys came along and was like, well, I sort of grew up kicking it off the ground. The next progression is a slightly low tee. So I'm just going to stick with that because that's what I've always done, round the corner, just like all the other guys. And then this new sort of style of kicking has come in, of being a little bit squarer. It feels really good because it's really similar to your punt kick out of hand. And I think it promotes slightly more distance because you've got your hips and a stronger position up the back of the ball that you can get yourself into. Like if we look at some of the really big strikers of the ball, Reece Hodge, even like guys like Owen Farrell, Andre Pollard, they're so powerful through the ball, big and strong. Kuhn Bosch is exceptional. So I think percentage-wise, you can get more consistency, better strikes more often on the slightly higher tees like the RB Vortex range. I think is easier for kids to get on, and that's why we're seeing so much more of it.
Yeah, because when you're a kid as well, you're always struggling from out wide because you can't get the distance to get in. So none of them are kicking it from the wing. So then it ends up being your prop in your team is kicking from the wing because he has the longest boot because he's the most mass. or there's always a standard back rower that does everything, the captain of the team usually, and he's the kicker, he's the captain, he's the one that fetches the balls and scores all the tries as well. But yeah, it's interesting.
But just on that, because I've watched everything of Dave Alvered. He's obviously famous for coaching Johnny Wilkinson, and James O'Connor has really taken to that style of kicking. What I find is those guys have tried other things and then they've committed to this. They completely understand why they do it and can answer all the questions you have around it. So I think that's the key, is try out as many tees as you can, give them a good crack, and then commit to one for sort of 2 months, and then make up your mind of I'll change or I'll commit to this thing.
There's so many variables as well, and there's an interesting one now more so than in the past, like with those kickers that are coming around the ball, and that's 4G pitches. I don't know if you've played on a 4G pitch, but you know the way you were saying you stamp the ground like those old kickers, then you put the tee down and then you put the ball on the tee. Now you can't stamp the ground because it's made of plastic, so it sits higher, so you won't have as much distance if you're coming around the ball now as you would if you came from behind it, essentially, on a 4G. Something to think about. I know you don't have to have 4G pitches as much in the southern hemisphere because the weather isn't as bad as it is up here, but it's definitely a factor up here. And another thing
I spoke with Owen Farrell, actually. He messaged back and forth a few times. He found that he needed a T variation that was 5 mils lower for the 4G because of how high the T sit. So he was noticing it with just his current T that he had to change and adapt it for the different style of pitch, which was really interesting. So there you go.
That's madness. And as well as that, I think, well, I don't know, but you know, when we're saying we put the heel in the ground and put the ball down there, when you're younger and you kick that way, the ball seems to always fly out straight because you're essentially putting like a funnel for the ball to fly through. So I found I knew my sweet spot when I was doing that when I was younger, and accuracy would never be an issue, but it was distance that was the worry if I struck it well, essentially. Whereas the higher you get off the ground, the more you have to refine your technique and have it down to a T, because if you go left or right, as you said, you may end up with a slice.
Yeah. And the thing about the stand up and the low T kickers is generally, if they're not really consistent, they have a lot of backspin in their kick, a lot of underspin, which then takes away your distance. So what we're chasing with the strike is that nice thud off the boot, but a really slow, consistent backspin. It means we've really got through the ball and hit the sweet spot. So I think that's promoted slightly more off the higher tees on the ball on the 45 because it promotes that slower sort of thud ball flight that we're chasing.
And then the question that I have for you now, after all this talk about the kicking tees, if you had to kick a goal to save your life now, which tee would you pick? Because you've experimented with them all, essentially.
Yeah, I'd go with the mid-cut personally now. But I spent 5 years kicking off the Dan Carter low kicking tee as well. So I've been through all those struggles, and I'd definitely go with the mid cut. It's our number one seller as well. It's the most popular. So, but again, I think it's just the progression of time. Like who knows, in 20 years, we might be back to low tees again because something's changed. So, yeah.
It's all on the individual, as we've kind of talked about throughout the podcast, I suppose. So now, just before we finish, I wanted to go through some quick fire questions. So the first one is proudest achievement to date.
We won a trophy called the Ranfurly Shield playing for Otago. So our province hadn't won it for 56 years. So it was huge. Like the airport was mad. It was and the team was really cool because Otago had almost gone bankrupt and kicked out of the competition like 2 years before this. So all us academy boys, like we were on the lowest contracts you could get paid, and all us academy boys and good mates living together all came through and won this thing together. It was really special, and our sponsor was a beer sponsor called Spates. So we had an amazing couple of days together.
Yeah, I'm sure. Jack with Otago last season as well actually won it too, and he said it was pretty heavy. Awesome. It was pretty heavy and a lot of Spates as well. And we were talking about the schooners, or like it's called a pint, obviously. in
Yeah.
New Zealand because I was down there. I played down there for a brief period or one season.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
the pint, you ask for a pint in the bar, you don't get an actual pint, like, so you're better off getting a pitcher, which is called something else. It's not called a pitcher. What's it called?
A handle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
handle.
lot of terminology you have to catch on with fast, but if you're in the rugby circles, you catch on with all of that terminology as well as the terminology to field pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Next question is favorite athlete of all time.
Jordan was always my guy growing up, and then obviously The Last Dance was amazing. I've watched it 3 times now.
Same as
Jordan and Kobe. I just love his mindset, and it's so cool.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I kind of knew you were going to say that for some reason. I don't know. I think it was the basketball chat earlier, and then obviously you're not the only person that said that in the last while. I think The Last Dance has kind of brought him back into people's minds as well. So.
I think as a kid there was heaps of Jordan clips and videos. So there's probably the easiest person to find as well. So maybe that's why he inspired a lot of people.
Yeah. And being who he is as well, obviously, and his mindset is just ridiculous. Then favorite rugby player or moment of all time? Or you can give us both.
Favorite rugby player, Jeff Wilson. He was a big inspiration growing up just with how he played and his skill set, and pretty unique. He changed the game a little bit with his chip kicking and speed and swerves and stuff. Christian Cullen, same sort of era. That'd be my favorite player. And then favorite moment, was it? Yeah, so probably just kicking goals, right? Like you have not a moment, but you have games where you go like 8 from 8 or 7 from 7, and those are so satisfying because you have to enjoy those, because there are games where you go 2 from 6 and you're not feeling too good about things. So just those games where I put in the work and nailed it was pretty satisfying.
It's mad though, isn't it? On the games where you go 8 from 8 or when you kick everything, you can't explain why they're all going over, but when you go 2 from 6, a lot of the time you, in your head anyway, you think you know exactly why you are missing so many kicks.
Yeah, I would agree. I also think just some days you're on. Some days you're just nailing it, and your body's doing exactly what you're telling yourself to do. And there was a couple of days I had where I had no idea why. And that's probably what inspired me to sort it out and figure out my technique. And then those days become few and far between, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. You're just trying to reduce the number or the frequency of them. Next question is, who's playing you in the movie?
Everyone says I look like Wayne Rooney a little bit, but
I don't know how his acting is.
Yeah. Who's playing me in a movie? It would be a bit of a spin, but it'd be Kevin Hart.
Okay, yeah.
I know we don't look the same,
no,
but he can play me, and it'll be a spin on it.
And how we'd work on the accent now would be what I'd be interested in, because there's not many people can do a Kiwi accent.
Exactly. People are already excited to see this movie because of what he's going to do with it.
Rugby Bricks, the motion picture. What meal or food are you loving at the moment?
What meal? I'm cooking a lot of just chicken, rice, and broccoli, to be honest. Through COVID, I've just gone hard with consistency. I watched this thing about a personal trainer. He said just eat like a dog. They eat the same thing every day, and they always have pretty good lives and well-being. So I've stuck with that through COVID, which is going well.
It's a bit boring though. Chicken, rice, and broccoli.
Not a good answer. Eh?
No, but it's I like it. I like it. We like different, and that's definitely different to what I've been hearing so far. Artists you've been listening to a lot recently?
Kanye West. I listened to his latest track, which was interesting. I loved all his media stuff. Like, he's so good at it, just making a scene and all that stuff with Kim on the red carpet and what they were wearing and stuff. Like, good stuff. I love all that stuff. And then his graduation album growing up was always real cool to listen to. So Kanye's my guy.
If you contrast the two, it's like a completely different artist, like say the Donda and then the graduation, or even the college dropout. Like, but somebody else said this on the podcast, an athlete, and she said, if you go into the gym and you're trying to please everybody in the gym with your playlist, just put on Kanye and everybody be happy.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. A bit of everything. What books have you been reading lately, or have you been reading any?
More of a podcast guy. So I listened to this amazing one, David and Goliath, and it talks a lot about how David was actually the favorite, not Goliath, and just sort of explains about his skill set, why he was so much ready for that fight, and all the different things, and how a lot of people have misheard that story, and there's always a different side to it. So that was a really cool book. I forget the author of it. And then a few things to do with business. I've been learning a lot about brand. I'm obsessed with it at the moment, just with Rugby Bricks and what we're trying to do, and your top 1,000 fans and community. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about that.
Absolutely. There's a bit of a contrast there when you talk David and Goliath and being underestimated. And I'm just thinking Australia versus South Africa, and how 2 weeks ago before that, Australia are in disarray. They're never coming back from it. Whereas people didn't realize, or they didn't stack up the two different styles that were coming, and this injection of youth that's come into the system too. So everything was set up for Australia to lose, but really they were the perfect, first off, maybe before the All Blacks, they were the perfect kind of foil to South Africa's plan, weren't they?
And this is so perfect example. I think we don't understand and probably respect enough what the South African boys have been through in the last 6 months with COVID, travel, family. They're pretty emotional humans, South Africans, and they turned up in Australia, and it wasn't like they could go out. They had to do quarantine, and they're locked in a bubble, and I'm already pretty frustrated with life. I think there's a little bit of that as well. So this is what the David and Goliath book talks about, is the underdog and the people that we think are the favorite actually sometimes aren't. And it's really interesting. It really opens your mind up to look at things differently.
That's a good recommendation for everyone then. Second last question. What's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 12 months?
How much a kid can change your perspective on things. So we've got a 4-month-old daughter, and I've been very busy with Rugby Bricks in life, and she doesn't give a shit what I'm doing during a day. When she wants attention and needs some love, that's all that matters. So that's been cool. It's come at a really good time. Obviously, it's been a rough 2 years. So to have a daughter to put a lot of energy into, it's been so much fun. So
deadly. Congrats on that. Last question. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
My dad always used to tell me to believe in Peter. He'd always put it in a text, just BIP, believe in Peter. I think what I would tell him is speed kills. So not in the driving sense, I'd say with a rugby sense. If you're fast, you're dangerous. So I would have put more energy into being faster, would be one thing I'd want to go back. And be a little bit more cocky would be the two things that I'd say.
Unreal. And I can take all of them now as well, because believe in Peter actually applies to me too. And it's a great plug for my business, Speed Kills too. So any rugby athletes out there, get working on your speed, and if you need any help, you know where I am. Peter, thanks a million for that. That was really, really enjoyable. Time absolutely flew. Really appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome what you're doing. So keep up the great work.